Günaydın. Okay, I will now begin as a revision as usual. Last class we began to look at the classical period, and today we will do that. Could you please turn that? Yeah, thanks. Is it better now? The sun is in the eye of some of your friends. Okay, thank you very much. We need the sun, but not in the wrong place. Okay, so we will look at the classical period again as a revision. We had begun with the Acropolis of Athens, which we shall continue, and then we will proceed with the Hellenistic period. And Rafet Bey, who is working with the recording of the lectures, will do his best so that those of you who wish to study during the Bayram, because you have a free time, you'll have access to the lectures. He is not promising, but he will do his best. So we thank him for that. Okay, so again, back to the beginning of the lecture. We said that the skills required for the sculptor are very much the skills which are also required for the architect because of the sculptural qualities of Greek architecture. And in fact, there were probably many sculptors who were employed in the building of Greek temples. But the task facing the architect of the Greek temple was by far more complicated and sophisticated compared with the task of the sculptor, for the simple reason that stone is the basic material, and stone has a very low tensile strength. So in a structural system of load and support, where the columns carry the lintel, or where the posts carry the lintel, you cannot open the space between two columns too much, because the stone will crack. So you have to heed the problems of the limited tensile strength of a stone, which is another factor the Greeks had to think when they were dealing with the problem of Greek architecture. The sculptural precision of Greek architecture required some precautions during the process of construction as well, because in the process of carrying the blocks, transporting them, and then erecting them, it was inevitable that you might chip the stone or damage the stone, which would be difficult to correct. So during the quarrying process, there were usually extra margins in the quarried stones, so that they could be shaved off once everything was completed. So you would put the blocks in their place, and if little accidents occurred, then you could shave them off, and then the lack of precision would not be a problem in that regard. The unfinished blocks that we find in archaeological sites give us a good idea about the process of treating the blocks before hoisting them into place. This was a very precise operation. Every block had an absolute precise location. No block was placed haphazardly. You took great precaution in the measurement and in the placement of the block. So corner blocks on the floor of the temple, the drums which were placed in precise locations incised on the floor blocks, and then the stacking of the drums, one on top of the other, was done with very refined measurements. So they were great geometricians and mathematicians, in addition to being good craftsmen and carvers of stone. Again, when we look at the sites, as I said a moment ago, you have traces and incisions, which give a good idea about the process of building the Greek temple. And this also gives us an idea about the design. How did they conceive of the temple? Because they didn't have pen and paper at that time. How did they lay out the plan? How did they proceed about erecting the walls of the temple and then the columns? Did they erect the chamber for the god first and then put the columns? Or did everything proceed all together? We get an idea about this process of construction and, of course, the process of design, needless to say, through some of these incisions on the blocks in demolished buildings. As a result, you have very fine, bold lines, and both the unseen parts of the temple, as well as the parts which are seen, were constructed of good quality masonry. A very different attitude to materials than we shall see in the following weeks in Roman architecture. Romans used a lot of facing, and it didn't matter what was inside, visually at least. Structurally, it's another problem. Here again, another example showing precise lines which were incised ahead of time before the building went up. And to hold the blocks together, there were clamps, depressions on the rock, which have special names. This is a swallowtail clamp. You do not need to remember the name. But within that depression was poured molten lead, which became solid after it solidified. And that would hold the blocks together. So if there were shiftings or settlings of the earth, the base rock on which the temple is erected, then the blocks of stone constituting the temple would not be dislodged. This is important because the Greek temples usually did not have binding material. There was no cement that held together the different blocks of stone. So in that regard, the clamps which fastened the individual blocks together are quite important. And then I showed a ballerina and then a golf player to give you an idea of the extreme precision and the extreme balance that would be necessary in the construction of the Greek temple. The Greek temple, in terms of its usage of the stone material, we emphasized that it did not have an attitude to stick things on in a decorative sense. There was a rationale for every element of the Greek temple. The volute, the capital, the triglyph, the metope, these were not decorative elements, but they had a reason for existence within the overall conception of the design of the Greek temple. You did not stick up something just because it looked nice. And this kind of surface treatment is again rather different than what we will encounter in Roman architecture later on. Then we exaggerated this statement by showing an ad from the Coca-Cola company, which wanted to promote its product by referring to the Parthenon, a world-famous monument. But this kind of creative act would not be of any interest to the ancient Greek architect, because as we have stressed time and again, the ancient Greek architect was interested in perfecting what he had. He didn't want something different. He didn't want to create something unusual. This wasn't his concern. His primary concern was to refine even further what he had in hand, to work with the proportions, to work with the scale. And in this regard, every Greek temple shares common features, and they are quite recognizable for these features. But the way these features are used, the way these features are brought together, indicate the level of skill and the degree of visual impact that is achieved. We also kept stressing the relation between sculpture and architecture, not only in terms of the carving process of the stone, but also in terms of viewing. The way a Greek the sculpture was viewed, especially after the poses began to change from the strictly frontal and standing kouros statues into statues like the Discopolos, the discus thrower. We find that the particular view of the observer, the perceiver, regarding the statue was very important. So the Discopolos, we said, represents an athlete in the frozen moment of hurling the discus. Rather, the moment just before hurling the discus. This is a moment where pent-up energy is gaining a momentum, and immediately after that frozen moment, the discus will leave the hand and be hurled at its destination. And that moment, that desired moment, the moment that was desired to be captured, is conveyed in a chosen and designed composition. So in this composition, there are imaginary lines. The artist looked at the figure and created a curve in the bending of the arms, and then there is a zigzag movement, and the lines of the composition are quite calculated. And because they are calculated, even though this is a three-dimensional sculpture, it works best if you look at it from a point where these lines can be perceived. So if you move behind the discus thrower, or if you move a little bit to the side, then you will not have the desired effect that was intended by the sculptor who carved the athlete. So this angular attitude, this choice of the perfect angle, is also very similar to the way the Greek temple is placed within the landscape. So you can think of the Greek temple as a sculptural edifice in the landscape, a sculptural architecture, And the principles of viewing the Greek temple are similar to the principles of viewing the Discopolos or similar statues. So when we look at the temple of Apphia in Aegina, you don't need to remember this name, we immediately notice that the colonnades of the temple are arranged in such a way vis-a-vis the entry to the sacred precinct, the temenos of the temple. You can't enter the sacred precinct from any point you desire. The entry is also designed. So there is a propylon, a gate which allows the entry, and once you enter through the propylon, you have a 3/4 angular view of the temple. So you perceive the temple as a monumental sculpture in the landscape. It's the visual impact created by the columns, the short and long facades of the temple that is of immediate concern. And just like we observed in the evolution of the Kouros figures, and just like we observed in the evolution of sculpture from the archaic to the classical periods, the evolution of temple design in this visual aspect was also practiced quite a lot, steadily, to attain a peak of perfection in viewing the Greek temple. And the point which was reached in the 5th century BC on the Acropolis of Athens with Parthenon, that was dedicated to the patron deity of Athens, who was Athena, is a case in point. The Parthenon worked out the proportions to such an extent that the width of the temple, the length of the temple, the height of the temple, and accordingly the different elements constituting the temple, in other words, the height of the columns, the sequence of the triglyphs and the metopes, the arrangement of the pediment in relation to the entablature, and then the rest of the pediment were all combined in such a way that it became impossible to repeat that. It became impossible also to surpass that, which is why it is often said that the evolution of the Doric order reached a pinnacle with the high point, the highest point, with the Parthenon, and then from then on something else happened. The Doric could not go further. The Doric column could not become more slender. The Ionian influences started to merge with the Doric, and as a result, this was a significant point. Like the temple of Apphia in Aegina, the Parthenon itself also rises above the polis. Acro means high, Acropolis means the high polis, and you can see the gleaming columns, the shining columns of the Parthenon from many kilometers away. And then the columns and the Parthenon disappear from view as you approach. You are brought to the outskirts of the Acropolis hill, and then you climb the Acropolis through a calculated entrance which ends in the propylea. The propylea is a special gate for the Acropolis of Athens. It's a propylon. A propylon is a gate allowing entry into the sacred temenos, and the propylaea is the special propylon for the Acropolis of Athens. So, in the consciousness of every Athenian or many Greeks living in the Peloponnesus, you had a prismatic rock, a rock, rising to the clear skies of the Aegean, the cloudless, brilliant, weather, and then above that rock, suggesting strength, suggesting durability, suggesting solidity. You have the rising of the Parthenon without any competition. So when we look at the Acropolis of Athens, as I said, the temple dedicated to the patron deity, Athena. Athena was the goddess for Athens. You have nothing that competes with it. The temple stands in full splendor. And that splendor is heightened in a psychological manner too, because once you come to the bottom of the Acropolis, the temple disappears from view until your visual expectation is allowed to accumulate and then to explode once you go through the propylaea, when you are confronted with the statue of Athena and then the three-quarter view of the Parthenon. There are other buildings on the Acropolis of Athens as well, like the Erechtheion here, and like the temple of Athena Nike. But these in no way compete with the visual and physical impact shared by the Parthenon, the major temple on the Acropolis of Athens. So, in plan, again, you proceed through the propylaea, and once you emerge, you see the statue of Athena here, and then as you have your first gaze toward the Acropolis, you have the three-quarter view of the Parthenon. A very calculated sequence. It looks organic. There's nothing rigid here. There's no Egyptian, symmetry like we saw in the mortuary temples. But nevertheless, it is calculated. It is designed in order to provide the best possible view. And this view is still quite impressive today. We mentioned Le Corbusier, who was also quite impressed in the experience of the Parthenon when he first encountered it. So he sketched the hill of the Acropolis, the pinnacle of the hill, the Parthenon, and all of this under the Aegean sky. It's a very simple geometry. It's a very powerful impact, and the simplicity and the boldness of this statement made by the natural hill of the Acropolis with the Parthenon on top of it did not escape the eye of the young architect Le Corbusier. So the entrance to the Parthenon, which is a very special temple, had to be through a special entrance. The propylaea. The propylaea was no ordinary propylon, as we said, and to make it respectable, to make it befitting as an image, it was given the likeness of a temple. So, like a Greek temple, there are metopes and triglyphs. There is the Doric order. In fact, it's quite a refined Doric order. But there was one major difference, and that is that in the intercolumniation in the center, we find that the Greek architect could break the rule to insert more metopes and more triglyphs by removing a central column from the center. Something like this would have been unthinkable for the Greek temple, but it shows us that once the scenario, the architectural or topographical or religious scenario dictated it, the architect did not become a slave of the conventional design. If it was necessary, the design could be altered. So, in the case of the propylon, because the entrance function is more important to allow a smooth access to the temple, the rule, bless you, the rule was broken, and the normal strategy of having metope triglyph was not heeded. And this enhanced the respectability by providing an entrance that had the full splendor of the temple image, but which also allowed a smooth progression, ceremonial progression. So here you see the outside and inside of the propylea, and they are both identical with the metopes and triglyphs. They look like small models of temples. And the propylea, as you enter it, is also making a suggestion toward the trends of unifying different structures which we will encounter in the Hellenistic age. At the entrance to the Acropolis of Athens, there are various other buildings, and these buildings have been unified, at least partially, visually, by enveloping them with a U-shaped stair. So you have this unity of entrance, which facilitated the more unimpeded perception of the propylea. And our friend Le Corbusier was quite sensitive about this. The ascent to the Acropolis of Athens, to the Acropolis through the propylea, is a ritual in itself. As you approach the sacred of the sacred, you for the first time see the columns rising in their marble crispness, and then you are almost funneled to enter, and I draw your attention to how light becomes part of the design. And in all the Greek temples, the presence of the sun, the function of light, playing on the perception and definition of the features is of utmost importance. This is an architecture of light. So you go through the propylea, and then you counter columns similar to the entrance as you emerge from the inside. And your first view of the Parthenon is through the fluted columns of the propylea. You are given a glimpse of the temple, and then once you emerge through the columns, you have the calculated three-quarter view. And even in its ruined state, and this is not a computer-generated image where nice clouds were put there. This is a real photograph. You have the moving clouds of the heavens, the bright blue sky, and then the deep diagonals of the shadow areas, and then the outline of the columns becoming quite crisp through the contrast of areas in the light and in the shadow. And then you also have this very rhythmic effect, giving a rather vibrating kinetic effect to the columns. This view is enhanced in every way by the skill which is bestowed upon each architectural block that existed in the Parthenon. The columns are the highest, which when compared to the evolutionary sequence, the column diameter times the height gives you this very slender appearance, and I draw your attention to the human figures here. The metopes are each carved with very fine reliefs. The pediment has a composition which is covering the entire triangular area and leaving a space behind. So it's almost a deep space, almost like the stage of a theater where these mythological scenes are enacted. And then we mentioned that the perfect appearance of the temple is added to by employing optical illusion. By that, we mean the distortion in the carving of the images. We mean distortion in the absolute straightness of the floor surfaces. We mean distortion in the straightness of the columns. They are flattened slightly in order to give not a sagging appearance, but to give a straight appearance without creating this sagging feeling at all. So in every regard, from the carving of these flutes, which are very refined and crisp, to the carving of each individual scene on the metopes, to the carving of fully three-dimensional figures in the pediment, we have the hand of the sculptor at work. So in the other Greek temples, you see most of these features. There's nothing unusual about what we have in the Parthenon. What is unusual in the Parthenon is that what we see one at a time, or two or three at a time in different temples, are all together present in the Parthenon. So the Parthenon brought together the most sophisticated conglomeration of the different sets of successes that we see in the different and individual Greek temples. That's what makes it so special. There's nothing innovative about it. It's a very traditional design. But all the little successes, all the little refinements that you see individually in separate temples are brought together in one grand ensemble, in one grand orchestration on the Parthenon in the Acropolis of Athens. So even in its ruined state today, you see the bold horizontals, which don't compete with the verticals. They don't create a confusion because the verticals are accented by the rhythmic sequence of the columns. And when you have that, you get what was so successfully captured by Le Corbusier, the bold horizontals of the base of the temple, the steps of the base, and then the shimmering quality. I mean, there's no static competition between vertical and horizontal here. Instead, they work to create a lively architecture altogether, because the vertical has been divided into this shimmering quality through the flutes, which enhances the effect through the perspective view of the eye as you move toward the distance. So in this sense, again, you can't think of the Parthenon without light. I mean, without light in a subdued climate like England or Northern Europe, the full impact of the Parthenon cannot be perceived or experienced. So here's a diagram showing the optical illusion, and in an exaggerated sense, we might say that there is nothing straight in the Parthenon. And then we completed our class yesterday by saying that not just the exterior treatment and perception of the temple, but also the internal arrangement which enhanced the perception of the monumental cult statue inside. The statue of Athena was done in the most desirable manner. So the base of the statue is placed in a central location from which it can be perceived, and then it is further shaped by a U-shaped colonnade, and there's no problem of being squished from the sides. It's airy, and the goddess enjoys the full space while standing of the house that was built for her by the polis of Athens. And here is another view. The U-shaped colonnade is double in story, and she stands in full splendor, which is befitting of the significance given to her by the Athenians. So we said that the Acropolis of Athens had other sacred spots, like the Erechtheion here, and the temple of Athena Nike. This, just like the Propylaea, reveals to us that the Greek architect was not a slave of tradition. He is not so subordinate to tradition that his hands are tied helplessly when he is confronted with a necessary situation through the topography. And a case in point is the Erechtheion. In the Erechtheion, what we have is a small area. I mean, if you look at the model here, on the Acropolis, you have this area here compared with that of the Parthenon. And within this small area are several different sacred spots. Sacred spots to the Cecrops here, a sacred spot to Poseidon, and then local heroes and gods. You see that the place is littered with spots that have acquired meaning over time. So this is a very sacred topography, and the points of sacredness require a commemoration. But within such a small area, and you also have a land which is not entirely flat, it is impossible to build a temple to each one of the gods. So what the architects did at this point was to gauge distance, gauge the topography, and have a hybrid temple. So you have a hexastyle facade here, on the eastern part. And then here you have a tetrastyle facade with 4 columns. And then here you have an unusual, porch, which we shall see. Here you don't have any columns at all. So all of that has been combined. And because the sacred topography and because the uneven topography dictated a creative solution in order to be able to honor the past of the polis, the mythology of the polis, and the due respect to the ancient, distant heroes and the gods and goddesses of the polis, this kind of hybrid solution was created. So you see that on one hand you have a small porch here, which is the so-called caryatid porch, with ladders carrying the roof. So the ladders become columns. These are statues of freestanding ladders, carved in fine detail, but they are the supports for the load which they carry. In here, you see there is a tremendous drop in the height of the land, and the level difference has been gauged by a colonnade in that fashion. And this height here, which is this, is gauged with a remarkable solution in the central part. With the level of the land and the height of the entablature, you would have had to have columns going all the way to the ground, which would give an unsightly appearance to the temple. In order not to do that, there was a blank story that was created, and above that, not to have a blind wall here, engaged columns which are not freestanding, but which are half columns stuck to the wall are created. There's one other difference here. Can anyone notice that? Something that is not in the Parthenon that we talked about a moment ago. A very significant difference. Can anyone see that? What do we not see here? Yes, yes. What is your name? Özge. Özge. Thank you, Özge. Özge has just murmured that we don't see the triglyphs and the metopes. You should say that boldly. Believe what you see. So we are on the Acropolis of Athens. We are talking about, or we were talking about the Parthenon as the pinnacle of the Doric achievement. And we talked about the Doric reaching its finest refinement and attenuation, and you can't go beyond that. Well, in the Erechtheion, we see that what is being used is the Ionian order. They're not even using Doric here. This is as Ionian as you can get. The base, the Ionian volutes, no triglyphs and metopes. The frieze has the typical Ionian, bands, and then the carved frieze course, which envelopes the top part of the temple. So this is also a period which shows the position of the Acropolis of Athens in history. In the wars that had ensued in the 5th century, which involved the Persians and the Athenians, or the Greeks at large, the Persians had been defeated. They were thrown out of the Western world. They were contained in the East. And after this, the Athens, through the period of relative peace, and then the accumulation of funds that had been collected for the navy to defeat the Persians, was now devoted to grand architectural projects. And just like Paris or New York City became the center for artists and for aspiring young writers or painters and architects, Athens became the gathering spot for sculptors and architects. And a number of Ionian architects came to Athens, and we have actually the craftsmen and architects from the East, from Ionia. So in this hotbed of the Doric order, on the Acropolis of Athens, we have even the usage of Ionian elements. So in the present state of the Erechtheion today, we see that some of the sacred spots are being maintained. I mean, this is a sacred tree, but obviously this is not a very old tree, but the spot of the tree is still maintained as a holy tree. And then there was a hole for the thunderbolt of Poseidon to escape. And in that sense, the roof was perforated for that mythological requirement to take place. So in every sense, you can see that the architect on the Acropolis of Athens is trying to surmount difficulties which arise from conventions. And these conventions are broken when the necessity dictates it. In this reconstruction, you see the sacred tree, you see the caryatids carrying the column, you see the painted frieze enveloping around the temple. And this reconstruction, like the earlier ones that I showed you, also reveal that the myth of this pristine, white, gleaming marble is not tenable. The Greek architecture, unlike the neoclassical architecture that we see in the West today from the 19th century onward, did not have this puristic white aesthetic. The stone was brightly painted, the reliefs were painted, the capitals were painted, the metopes and the triglyphs were painted. So the polychromy of the ancient Greek architecture is an aspect that we should take into consideration when we are dealing with Greek architecture. Similarly, the caryatids who are carrying the porch were also brightly painted, which is a different impression than today. But here, I would like to emphasize the point I have been making for the past two lessons, the affinity and overlapping of sculpture and architecture is perhaps best represented by the caryatids, because these are very fine sculptures, but they are used instead of columns, they are structural. So nothing can show perhaps better than the caryatids this intertwining of the skills of the architect and the sculptor together. So here you have a tetrastyle. I mean, we have 4 columns instead of 6 or 8. And each one of those figures here is done in a fine drapery, the folds of the drapery fall around as if they are transparent. The face doesn't look very good today for the simple reason that when the sculptures, fall down to the ground, the first thing that hits the ground is the nose. That's why the museums are full of classical sculptures without the nose, and that affects the overall view here. But you have to think of her with the frozen, smile, the idealistic stance, but in the context of architecture in this regard. So that tetrastyle porch that we saw in the Erechtheion is repeated in the tetrastyle design of the small temple of Athena Nike, on the visible from the outside of the Acropolis, and which you also see as you are approaching the Propylaea. And this is also Ionian. It is hardly a Doric temple. A very small site, a tiny little site, and in order to compensate for that, the Ionian order is used. There are several steps which give an additional height to the temple of Athena Nike. But because the site is so small, to have a colonnade on all, four sides would have been awkward. So you have a tetrastyle, 4 columns in front and 4 columns in the back. And the slenderness of the columns, the height of the columns, the refinement is Ionic. The Doric would not have done in this case. And the frieze, which envelopes all round the temple below the disappeared pediment, is Ionian. The columns don't envelop the temple, the chamber of the goddess, but the unity is maintained by the steps which envelop the temple on all 4 sides at the bottom, and then the frieze which wraps around the temple on the top. And then you have the emphasis on the front and back of the temple, leaving the side flanks blank. In another instance here, we have observed that the Greek architect could change the rules if it was necessary. But this was not done to do something different. It was not done for the sake of creating something unusual. It was done because of necessity. The particular topography or the mythologies necessitated such a design. And here you see the steps on all 4 sides of the temple, and then the tetrastyle Ionian columns on the 2 sides of the temple. And the similarity to the caryatid porch of the Erechtheion is quite remarkable. I mean, the tetrastyle here, the tetrastyle here, 2 tiny porches. This one is standing free, and then this one is part of the eclectic complex of the Erechtheion, which is like no other Greek temple that we have seen. So we now enter the Hellenistic age because the transition from the Doric refinement to the elaboration of other styles was dictated by a change in the mentality of the world. What we have been talking about is the 5th century BC. The peak of these developments that we saw on the Acropolis of Athens all belong to the 5th century BC under the guidance of Pericles, the ruler of the polis of Athens. But after that, we see that there are changes happening until the 5th century and slightly later. There is no central authority governing the Greek polis altogether. They loosely share a similar culture, but there's not a single authority. Each polis, whether it be Athens or Corinth or whatever, is independent. But in the period following this, we begin to see a slight change. And this change is cooking in Macedonia, north of the Peloponnesian and the Attic mainlands of Greece. And in Macedonia, we have a ruler, Philip II, and when Philip II died in 338 BC, he was succeeded by his son Alexander Iskender, who later became the Alexander the Great, Büyük İskender. So Alexander the Great took over the throne in 338 BC, that is the late 4th century BC, after his father was murdered, and then he was the ruler until 323 BC, and he died at the age of barely being 33 years old. So Alexander the Great, as he is known usually in the textbooks, was a ruler when he was barely 20 years old. I mean, I don't know how many of you are 20 years old, but it might be a comparison you might like to think about. He was very, very young. But what Alexander the Great did was to continue the project of expansion of his father. So from Macedonia, they gradually conquered the other Greek polis, creating a kingdom. And then in this kingdom, the expansion also continued toward the east. And as you may know, Alexander the Great went all the way to India. And this kind of exposure and this change of rule from the individual and independent polis to the more centralized authority of a kingdom, and then through the expansion of this kingdom to include many different peoples, created an expansion of mentalities as well. Until then, the world vision, the immediate horizons of the citizen of the polis was limited by his polis. Everything was for the polis. So the communal spirit to work as a team for the sake of the polis and the advancement of the polis was a major concern. But once the polis becomes part of a larger world, then the teamwork of the polis tends to weaken, and we see instead the rise of the individual. And with this rise of the individual, we find that the old traditions, the old conventions, the old restrictions, the sets of values are all transformed. And this transformation changes and puts into a metamorphosis the self-definition of the citizens of the Greek polis. Until then, there was a notion of being Hellenic. You were a member of the polis of Athens, you were a member of the polis of Corinth or Delos or Sparta or whatever, but you were a Hellenic Greek. But once the Macedonians took over the Greek polis in the Peloponnesus and in Attica, the polis became an entity under the rule of the Macedonians, who were not precise Greeks as had been in the past. So that's one change. The Macedonians are Greek, but they speak a different dialect, and they are newcomers to the scene. So with this Macedonian authority, we also have the introduction of many different peoples from the east. When you consider the range of territories that Alexander the Great added to the kingdom that he created, we see a melting pot of different cultures, different traditions, and as a result, there is a mutual exchange. The Hellenic Greeks are now exposed to Macedonian influence. They are exposed to the myriad heterogeneous influences that was made possible by new types of interactions and perceptions in the expansion of the personal horizons. So it is not at all surprising to see that both the architectural and the sculptural repertoire take a shift to break the rules, to break the traditional canons, both in repertoire and in style. As a result, when we look at the range of Hellenistic statues, and I will show you a couple of them here, you see that there is a change of subject. The concentration on cool, refined, ideal beauty is not a major concern anymore. You can depict an old woman like this. This is a old woman drinking, a drunken old woman. And not only the change of subject, but also the depiction of emotion, the contained, calm beauty, not conveying or revealing any kind of emotion, is gone. So the heightening of emotion, the heightening of drama gradually finds itself into the Hellenistic New World perspective. So this drunken old woman, in Turkish we might say kafayı hani buldu here. I mean, she is in ecstasy. She has been drinking. Her head is thrown back. You see that she is in a mental, intoxicated state here. And there's no hiding of the age. You see the sort of haggard face, the lean, muscular features of the face. Similarly, this boxer here, an old boxer, he is quite athletic, but way past the heyday of his youthful performance. But this is also an appropriate subject that can be depicted. The figure strangling a goose here is an unusual figure. There's no ideal beauty here, but a rather unusual subject. And the composition and the feeling which heightens the drama is very, very common. In this rather famous scene here, we have a Gallic chieftain who is committing suicide, and he begins by killing his wife first, and then he has the one final stab taking his own life. But the whole scene has a lot of pathos. There's a lot of the sadness in this. There's a lot of despair, perhaps in a proud way. But the cool classical sense of hiding the emotion and disguising any vestige of emotion with this cool, archaic, classical, frozen smile is gone forever. There is a pathos, a softness, which is combined with the drama created in this scene. And looking at his face, you see a sense of loss. The sense of loss which is conveyed in the eyes, the mouth. This is not a classical beauty done for eternity, but it's a frozen moment of loss and despair, the pain of defeat, the pain of taking, just having taken the life of his wife and about to take his own life, but also something proud about it. I mean, there is a quiet pride in this combined with sadness. So the softness, the defeat we see in this wounded warrior as well. Even the wound is shown. There's a wound in the chest, and the blood is coming out from the wound. So there is a realism, the realism together with the emotion, the sense of drama, the use of unusual subjects. Everything goes. I mean, suddenly the whole repertoire is opened and expanded. And in this sleeping faun here, you see the exaggeration of comfort. I mean, extreme comfort. The figure is sprawled. I mean, every single muscle is let go. It's loose. Even his fingers are dangling in the air in the repose of sleep. The head and his curls are behind his shoulder. And you see the sleeping figure here together with the lines on the forehead. So this again would not have been a customary pose in the classical period, but not unusual in the Hellenistic period. And in this famous scene, the Laocoon, we have an enactment of the escape from Troy. It's a Bronze Age legend, and we have the figure escaping with his sons. And this figure, according to the story, had angered the gods who were helping the Greeks and not the Anatolians. So after Troy fell, as the figure is trying to escape with the sons, then the goddess sends snakes as a punishment. And this is the moment of the man and his father with his two sons fighting the serpents. And nothing perhaps collects the full drama, the exaggeration as much as this figure. For one thing, you have a very dramatic composition. The sons and the men, they're writhing. I mean, they're almost like the octopus vase from Minoan Crete. I mean, the snakes are constricting them. The bodies are twisted and intertwined. There's no concern of a classical propriety or a classical calm here. Everything is very intense, very emotional, very theatrical, very dramatic. And the height of the emotion can be seen in the chiseled hair, the disheveled beard here, the knitted brows, the worried forehead, the mouth, and so you have the theatricality of the emotion here. So the Hellenistic period is a period of intense drama, which we see also in architecture. And the reflection in architecture of this Hellenistic drama is to be seen in monumentality and scenographic planning. The monumentality we might see in a temple like the Temple of Apollo in Didyma, and then the scenographic planning, which is the dramatic use of the landscape, we might see in Pergamon. So the nice, tidy and calculated classical precisions are giving way to the Hellenistic emotion, drama, and theatricality, breaking loose all, restricted traditions, as in the sculptures. So again, we see that the sculptures and the architecture reflect the spirit of the age. In some ways, living in the Hellenistic age would have been fantastic because the individual could do anything. There was a lot of money, there were resources, you could travel to distant lands, you could do different things, everything went. But on the other hand, it was also an age of insecurity because the former bonds which held together in a social contract each member of a polis were gone. Those had disappeared. So this is the age of monumental architecture, and as a semblance of that monumentality, I have chosen to show you the Temple of Apollo in Didyma in western Turkey, an Ionian temple. And the scale of this temple is quite remarkable when you compare it with the Parthenon or some of the other Doric temples. It's very monumental indeed. And yet, within this monumentality, we have the continuation of the cutstone, masonry, the skill of that cutstone masonry. But we also begin to see a kind of standardization which we were beginning to observe on the propylaea in the Acropolis of Athens. So when we look at the Temple of Apollo in Didyma, we see that it is surrounded by columns on all, four sides. But despite that appearance, it is a frontal temple. It has an calculated entrance, which is frontal. So you wouldn't want to climb up to the temple from these stairs, but you climb up from the stairs which allow the entrance to the temple. Yet this is a rather unusual design again, because it is a temple within a temple. This whole chamber here, which looks like the chamber of the traditional Greek temple, is actually open to the sky. I mean, this is open, and then you have a small temple within that temple. The temple functioned as an oracular center, kehanet merkezi. And for that reason, perhaps some of the functions were rather different, but in every sense, it recalls some of the old Anatolian traditions, as we saw in Hittite architecture, having temples open to the sky, having the significance of the sources of water, and there was a little spring here as well. So this idea of having an Ionian temple in the form of a forest of columns surrounding the temple, the proliferation of columns in the center, but having that whole ensemble being open to the sky, and yet more regularized and more standardized, more directionalized than the former temples, is very befitting to the Hellenistic age. The element of surprise, the psychological element, is also present here, because as you are confronted with the full monumentality of the temple, you come in and you want to enter, but you can't, because this is not an entrance. This is a huge window where the prophecy was delivered by the priest. On the contrary, the entrance is through narrow corridors. So, just like what we saw earlier, you are confronted with the full splendor, and then you come in to go inside the temple. You are put into these narrow corridors, and when you emerge through those narrow corridors, then you are suddenly confronted with the full splendor of the interior. So here's that grand opening, which is about 1.5 meters high, and the entrances are to the sides, very narrow, dark entrances. And I draw your attention to the fineness of the carving of the blocks, the precise fitting, the refinement of the moldings. So the cut stone tradition is still continuing. And here are the corridors. You go through these narrow corridors, and then once you emerge from the corridors, you are confronted with this grand ensemble here, the courtyard within the temple. So what you would have seen when you emerged in the inside would have been the small temple framed by the walls, the engaged columns rising quite high, surmounted with a frieze the course here, and all of it open to the sky. A very different idea of the temple. And above the frieze courses, in the engaged pilasters, would have been statues, reliefs of the Gorgon Medusa. Looking at this, you would see nothing classical here. For one thing, she has very thick lips. Her eyes are crossed, shashe, and then the curls of the bands of hair again are tousled about. So it's very realistic. It's very dramatic, totally non-classical in the way she is depicted, but still in connection with architecture. So we find that in Asia Minor, during the Hellenistic period, in this temple here, the role of the sculpture and the quality of the skill of working the stone is still continuing despite the heightened scale. And this is the age of the Lacan, as you can see here. So the head of the Gorgon Medusa here, with her tousled hair, is the same as you see in the Laocoon and the drama of the statue of the escaping father and son. On the other hand, when we go to another site, to Pergamon, we see that the rules are broken altogether. If you look at the Acropolis of the Pergamon citadel, the Temple of Athena is quite high, but it is very small. The change of repertoire that we saw in the sculptures, breaking the conventional subjects, is also to be seen in the typology of buildings. The whole Acropolis is not organized around the temple anymore. The temple is still important, but it's not the focus, even though it's high. But we have the focus in the grand, theater here, giving us a spectacular instance of what we call scenographic planning. A planning which heightens the effect of a dramatic landscape. And perhaps the most impressive case of that in the Hellenistic world is to be seen in Pergamon. You see the theater utilizing the steep hill. The theater is almost melted and welded into the landscape. It's hardly distinguishable. But more important than that, anyone seated in any part of the theater is also under the theater of the universe. I mean, you have the full view of the landscape, which is lying, ahead of you. And here you see it even better in this old photograph. There's no stage building here. And in the later Roman period, the road passing to a temple which was made utilized part of the stage building of the theater. So when ceremonies had to take place to go to the temple, they removed the wooden posts which would have been on the holes for the theater. So again, you have this dramatic change of use. And then this lack of standardization, the lack of breaking the rules, the lack of not having one model to follow is to be seen in the contrast of Priene, which I shall not talk about, but just to compare it with Pergamon, you have this time a grid plan, a site which is on a sloping land, but which has been negotiating with the land through the imposition of a geometric grid with streets intersecting each other at 90-degree angles, and then creating islands which we call insula, and subjecting all the public open areas, the sacred areas, the temple, the theater, the houses, and everything to the grid. A very different mentality than what we saw in the scenographic planning at the Pergamon. But this is the Hellenistic age, and everything goes. And you have to remember the Hellenistic age is a very exciting period when a lot of things were happening simultaneously, when all the rules were broken. There was nothing to restrain what you would have liked to do as an individual or in your city. There was a lot of money too, a lot of funding. If you became rich, then you would build yourself a house. And in the polis, this would have been a bit frowned upon, because you had to think of the good of the polis before you thought of personal aggrandizement. So this is a difference in the mentality of the period. And we shall continue with this next week, and then we will also embark upon the Roman world. Thank you very much.